Let's take our tools and apply what we've learned to a scenic photograph. And so what we're going to do is go into Photoshop, and once again, we're going to go through our similar workflow. So we're going to open a new file. And so I'm going to go to my desktop here, and then we're going to go to this last thing here called nepal.dng. So make sure you open nepal.dng, and I'm going to open that file. Okay, right off the bat, we have an image that looks like it's something you would throw in the trash. But this is the joy of Adobe Camera Raw and shooting with RAW files. I mentioned before that if you have an image resolution, that's how large the image is, how the distribution of pixels are. But the other thing that's really important is the bit depth, how much color information is in an image. And then also there's something, depending on your camera, you have more dynamic range. You can store more information. If you shoot RAW, all of that information is saved. And so this image right here is an image that I shot in Nepal, and you're going to be shocked at all of the information we can extract. Right now, the sky looks sort of okay. We need to bring out the foreground because you can't even see it. It's so underexposed. And then we need to be making some changes here to make this look like something you would want to show people. So the very first thing we need to do is we need to fix the exposures. We need to fix the tonal values to this. So we're going to do a global change to get it as close as we can. Then we're going to do local changes to get everything exactly the way we want them to. So watch what happens. What we're going to do here is we're going to take our exposure value, and we don't want to overexpose anything. So I'm going to click this little right little triangle up here. We already know that right here where the sun is setting, there is no image data. We're never going to get image data no matter what we do because it was just overexposed in the camera. So there's no data there. So we're not even going to worry about that. What we are going to do is we're going to take this exposure as far to the right as we can. There we go. Something about like that. Okay, so we're going to go up about 2¼ stops. Okay, I'm going to turn off this little thing. Now, our sky is way too bright in our foreground. We're starting to see stuff there. There are houses and green stuff. So let's go in here. These are now in the shadows. Let's increase our shadows. Holy smokes. Look at that. We actually have an image there. This is something that most likely you would absolutely not be able to do in a JPEG image. But in a RAW file, you've got all that data. You can pull that out. Okay, what we need to do is we need to start fixing some of these things. So the highlights, they're too bright. So let's try to bring those down a little bit. Now the sky is coming back. That looks cool. The shadows are coming out. We want more contrast. So let's take our blacks and let's move those down just a little bit. And then we'll take our whites and go to the right just a little bit. Okay, our color temperature, let's warm this up just a little bit. We want golden sky, something like that. We also want to take our clarity slider and increase the clarity just a bit so we can see some more of the details of this foreground here. And then we also need to sharpen up this image. So I'm going to go at 100%. I'm going to go down here, and we can see that this looks pretty good. But we can go in here to detail, and then we have our sharpening is at 36. Let's take that way up, something about 80. So we're looking at this, and now that's really popping. So if I turn that off and turn it on, you can see those details really coming out. And let's go back so we see the entire image. So we've just done some basic corrections here right off the bat. So we can click this down here to see the before image and the after image. They look like two different pictures, but it's the same thing. So what we need to do now is we need to start making local adjustments. We have the entire image sort of at a good starting point, but we need to sort of fix some things. We need that sunset to be a little bit more dramatic. We need the clouds to be a little bit clearer. We need to bring the balance from the foreground to the background back into balance, because right now it's too bright in the sun and not bright enough down here in the foreground. Okay, so we've done all we need to do in our basic edit. Let's go in and fix up some things here. We can see that we have some sensor dust on the clouds. We don't want to see that. So let's go down here to our healing area. So we're going to use our healing brush. I'm going to get a little bit larger brush by hitting the right bracket, bringing that size up to about 10. Then I'm just going to start clicking in here, using my hand to pan around. There's another little dust spot here. There's one right here. I'm just finding these as I'm zipping around, looking for them in the gray. I think we got them. Let's see if we can visualize the spots. Ah, there's one right there. Did I get that one yet? Nope. Let's get that. We'll visualize spots again, just so we can see this a little bit more clearly. Looks like there's something over here. Yep, there it is. This visualize spots thing is really useful to just see things that are sort of invisible until it shows you they're there. They're like, oh yeah, how did I miss that? So use visualize spots. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to go back and fit this whole image in, and then I'm going to go back to my basic edit. Okay, we've cleaned that up. Now we need to take this sky, and we need to make the sky a little bit more dramatic, a little bit more orange, and change the exposure of that. So what should we use? Well, it's a big area of the image. We can almost take a straight line and cut that in half. So that is a good candidate for this guy, the graduated filter. So I'm going to reset all of the edits. And then just so I can see what I'm doing, I'm going to take this exposure down by 2 stops. Then I'm going to click and drag that around, something like that. Move that up just a hair. Okay, now what we can do is we can start working on this sky. So the sky, I'm going to make the exposure down to about -4-ish, something like that. I'm going to take the whites up to make that much more dramatic. Take the blacks down. So that's really making that a lot more dramatic. I'm going to keep going there. Look at that. Look at that. We've got Jesus beams coming out. Take the temperature a little bit more. Something like that. Ooh, it's a little bit too orange. Okay, so we've got some highlights. I'm going to bring those down just a hair. Okay, and then I can play with this hue. I think it's good right where it is, but no, that's too orange. That's too yellow. Take that back to 0. We don't want to do something that's so nasty. We can take our saturation down just a bit if that is just a little bit too much, or up, depending on how you want this sunset to show up. So I like that. So it's pretty good. Okay, I'm going to move this down maybe just a little bit. And one of the things that we have here is we have these trees in this house that are being affected by this graduated filter. We can turn on our mask to see where that is. So let's paint out some of these edits using the eraser tool. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to erase these from this tree. I don't want that. You can again see why the tablet is so good to be able to paint things. We want to paint this off this little house here. Take that away. We don't want that. And then maybe we can just sort of follow the ridge line here. So we are determining exactly where this is happening. I'm just going to paint these edits off these mountains right here. Okay, so it's sort of like we have created an edit using a big brush, but using the graduated filter, we were able to do all of that all at once, just in one fell swoop. Okay, turning that off, turn off the overlay. That looks pretty darn good. Okay, let's go back to our basic edits and see if there's anything that we need to do here. Let's take our texture up just a hair. That looks pretty good. And I like that. And so you can play with this and see where you're, what works best for you. But let's just take a look at where we started, that, and then where we ended up, which is that. And we can play with all kinds of things here. Maybe we could make the temperature a little bit more blue. Ooh, I sort of like that. Or a little bit more amber, orange, whatever. It's a scenic photo. You can interpret it any way you want. Once that's done, we can open that in Photoshop. Now for this, we don't need to do any skin retouching. We don't need to do any of those types of things. Maybe if I wanted to, I could come in here and paint on some details. But for me, I like this scenic photo, and it has turned out in the way that I want. I think it is done. Okay, well, I've included in the class materials all of these files that you can go in and do some retouching. There's a beach scene that you can do some portrait or some scenic retouching and practice your skills and do that. You can practice on all of the different portraits that we've included there. We've got the advanced compositing that you can do to try to put those models together in those chairs that we included. The point is, now that you know all of these different tools and all the different principles and ways that you can use Photoshop, the way you use Photoshop is up to you. What you need to do now is take the things that you've learned, take these class materials and practice, 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 explore the interface, make the workflow your own, and in the end of the day, you will be proficient in Photoshop and you'll know your way around. Thank you so much for joining me for Photoshop for Beginners. I've had a blast teaching this. I hope you've had a blast following along, putting up with my wackiness and seeing all the things that we've been doing. But I hope that you've been learning as you've been laughing. It's been highly rewarding for me, and I hope it's been highly rewarding for you. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you in my next Creative Live class.